Oh, I've done the whole intro muted. What an absolute shocker I've had there. Anyway, hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new series on All for United. We're going to call it Timeline Talk, where we basically review the biggest talking points from Twitter over the past 7 days. I'll be joined by a brilliant panel of guests, which I will introduce to you shortly. But yeah, we'll see you on the other side.
Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
I could see you all just shaking your heads down below. I've had an absolute shocker there. But boys, it's brilliant. It's brilliant to have you on. I've only realised as I was assembling this lineup that it's pretty much the same lineup as yesterday. But you know, you get what you're given, don't you? I suppose. Mark, first of all, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, mate. I've had to turn my phone off because you couldn't hear me properly, so I might combust halfway through. But other than that, yeah, it's Friday, man. Friday, the weekend, game tomorrow. Exciting.
Happy days, happy days. Everyone else, you all right?
All good, yeah.
Lovely stuff, lovely stuff. Well, we're looking for debate tonight, so I want you to get involved in the comments as well. Give your opinions on the topics. The first one we're going to do is Ruben Neves. Now, obviously, there's a lot of rumours that have come out this week that United have overtaken Arsenal in the race for him, and etc. etc. And a lot of fans have been giving their opinion on whether he's the right model for that number 6 position that we're looking for. Now, before we get things started, we did do a poll on Twitter to get your thoughts on it, the viewers, and it was a pretty heavy swing in favour of signing him. 70% of people wanted to sign him. So I'll come to you first, Mark. Are you in agreement with the rest of the viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think my personal preference would have been Ndidi, but I'm still not overly sold on Rice, to be honest with you. And I think if he's available for 35 million, he's only 24 years old. He plays attacking, progressive football as a defensive midfielder, which I think we need. Then, yeah, I think it would actually be very shrewd business, quite honestly. I wouldn't be disappointed with it. Do you know what I mean? We've over the years, and I feel like he's been around forever, but over the years, he's scored some absolute worldies. Everyone's talked about how good he's been. I mean, it sort of worked in his favour in that Wolves team because they were quite sort of sat back all the time. But I think he's quite an aggressive player. He's obviously well looked after, and I think it would be a good signing for that price for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the price thing goes in his favour. Obviously, Premier League quality as well, and age is on his side. But Henry, what are your thoughts on it? Would Rice be your go-to man for a number 6 position?
Nah, not Rice. Again, I thought Calvin Phillips outshone him in the Euros. I thought he was better. So my mind is sort of made up on Rice. And if it's going to be like what they're saying, like 70, 80 million at least, no way. Don't even consider it. Let Chelsea pay that money. Let them do that because they want him desperately. Neves, again, I think 35 million, but then you add the United tax on, which always seems to happen anyway. So it's probably going to be 50. I would ask, who do you think is better kind of keeping the ball and retaining it? Because Neves doesn't actually, he doesn't play that style of football with Wolves. Doesn't play a progressive build-up style of football, really. They're sat back a lot of the time. So, personally, I'd go with Bissouma. That's my personal preference because Brighton play progressive build-up kind of football, and I know their XG is hilarious at times because they never score, but that's the right style of play, I think. So I wouldn't go with Neves. I'd still go with Bissouma.
Fair enough. Henry's had his say. Connor, I'll ask you a similar question. Is Neves the person to bring in? Does he suit the way we play? And can he play that number 6 on his own, I suppose, is the big question.
I've got reservations about him playing number 6 on his own. I know he plays DM for Wolves, but for the majority of this, I know they did play 4 at the back at times, but majority of the season they do play 5 at the back. So it's a lot easier to play DM when you're sat back 5 men, pretty much everyone behind the ball. So you're not asking him to do as much of the defensive work that you'd maybe see at United, because of Bruno and whoever is going to play in the left-sided midfield position are going to be much higher up. And so I've got reservations there. But I mean, for the price, 35 million, why do I see this though being almost like a Pogba replacement? It's the kind of cheap deal I could see the Glazers trying to. We had this discussion yesterday, and I can kind of see them trying to squirm that in, all 35 million, get a player on the cheap. I know it probably wouldn't be 35. It would probably be bumped up, as you said, the United tax up to about 50, maybe at most 45, 50. But I don't think he can play the 6 on his own. Some people might disagree if they've got actual statistics to back it up. I haven't looked into it that much, but I don't think it'd be a bad sign. Certainly not for the price. He's definitely a good player, and yeah, I think he'd fit in well, and certainly. Like I say, he's got that Portuguese connection with Bruno as well, so I wouldn't be against it at all.
Yeah. Listen, it wouldn't be a bad signing. Stu, I know we seem to, every show we do together, we seem to be talking about a defensive midfielder, but I know you're all about Brozovic. But would you be annoyed if Ruben Neves came
in? The previous seasons to the season just gone, no, I wouldn't. I thought he was excellent for Wolves, actually, but Wolves were very expansive 2 and 3 seasons ago. For whatever reason, Espirito Santos got them to play more deep and more of a defensive type of game. And I think Neves probably spent 12 months kind of redefining his game, because he did, as the lads have quite clearly said and quite correctly said, played the 6 for Wolves. What he offers is an attacking threat that McFred don't offer at the minute. Matic doesn't offer. He's very good with both of his feet. We know he's got a strike on him. We know he can score goals. Although I think he didn't score. I'm not so sure, but I don't think he scored last season. I am all about Brozovic, yeah. You have to take the blip that was Croatia, because it was the Croatian team, not just Brozovic, and forget about it. As a player, he's exactly what we need. I understand Henry's viewpoint on Basuma. I very much like Basuma, and understand everybody's thoughts on Camavinga. Very young. Basuma and Camavinga are very young. Brozovic isn't. He's 27, 28. But one thing we've got to look at is we've spent 73 million on Sancho. I think if Varane signs, it's going to cost us 60, 55, 60. And that doesn't probably leave a lot for a CDM unless we move Pogba out for 50 million. But I think at 35 million, if he can kind of show the qualities that he showed a couple of seasons ago, then yeah, he'd be a bit of a steal. So yeah, interesting. I think I don't buy into Declan Rice. I think he'd be way too expensive for us anyway. So I think we should take him out of the equation. But it depends. I read somewhere a couple of days ago actually that Bruno's pushing for Neves, for us to sign Neves. So maybe there's something in that. I don't know. But yeah, for 35 mil, if we got him at that, I think it'd be a steal, certainly in the current market.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Charlie, I wanted to get your opinion on this, because we this transfer window, it's looking like we're going to get Varane as well. So with Sancho and Varane, we're getting 2 absolute world-class players in their position. I don't think Neves quite falls into that category. So do you think by signing Neves, obviously he'd be a bit of an upgrade, but do you think by not going all out for one of the best in their position, we run the risk that he turns into another sort of Fred or McTominay when he gets here?
Well, I think this, this 4-3-3 that Ollie is obviously searching for, and that he's planned for, obviously this central defensive midfield player is actually the most key sort of position that we need to sort out, and it's the one that we've left to the end, which obviously is just, Sancho deal should have been sorted out before a year ago. It's been going on for 2 years. But if we're not careful, we're going to start panicking and running out of time. So let's hope Varane gets over the line. It'll probably take 2 more weeks, what we like, and then obviously the CDM will come. But I think the market for central defensive midfield players is very, very. I think it's a bit risky. I think it's a little bit dodgy. I think I agree with Henry. I do like Bissouma. I said before, I think Declan Rice is a decent screener of the back four. He does that very, very well. But actually, last season, if you compare, and obviously I like to say watch football with your eyes, but of course statistics do matter. And Neves defensively, in terms of blocks, pressures, has got better stats than Rice has. And I think Rice screens the back four very, very well. He makes more interceptions than Neves does. But I think that for seven, I think Declan Rice is probably should be around 40 million. I don't think he's that much of a good player. I think Neves' technical ability is clear of him. And yeah, Neves, he scored 5 last season, but 3 were pens, so only 2 in open play. But he can add that element. And, you know, since Michael Carrick left, we haven't had this player who can sit in front of the back four and dictate a game. You know, we've had Ander Herrera, who I think did a decent job. He was a little bit underrated, I think, at United, but he wasn't that sort of, I don't say Carrick-esque, but that sort of player like a Jorginho who can dictate the play of a game. And Neves has a little bit of that about him. And, you know, the big conundrum for me is if Pogba was to leave, we need, irrespective of talking about CDMs, we probably need 3 midfielders if Pogba leaves for me. I know it won't happen, but actually for this squad to challenge for the title, I think we'd actually need 3 midfield players. Whether that's bringing, I think Garner's going to go out on loan, but I think that we need 2 midfield players 100%. And I think if Pogba does leave, I think that 2 midfield players should come in, and Neves and Camavinga are obviously two options. But Neves did play that defensive midfield role for Wolves last season. And just a point on that what Stu made about, I think it was Stu, about the passive nature of Wolves. I think a big part of that was the loss of Raul Jimenez. You know, they lost their talisman, and Nuno obviously looked at it and thought, oh dear, you know, we're not going to score as many goals. So if we don't score as many goals, we need to make sure what else are we going to do? And obviously they switched to that back four to try and add a little bit more attacking part into the game. But they just didn't quite find the balance. And also I think with Neves, he's playing alongside a very good sort of tradesman, Coutinho, but I don't think that helps him either. So I think you will see Ruben Neves is a very, very good footballer. And I would 100% bring him in. I think 35 million is a steal for Neves. But I just think that we'll discuss Neves more. But I've just got another point to make later on in the show about the balance of a 4-3-3 that we need to make sure we get right.
Fair enough. And I'm sure if you wait long enough, we'll get a thread from Charlie on Ruben Neves at some point. It seems to be.
It's in planning now. It's in preparation. Neves versus Rice.
There we go. Cheeky little plug for you there. But Henry, I know you wanted to add something, so go ahead.
I just wanted to add, in terms of if we're going to play that 4-3-3, which is a dangerous formation to play, it really is, because if you don't get it right, you get torn apart. I think you've got to have someone that covers a lot of ground between the 2 more attacking players, between the 2 number 8s, essentially. You know, you look at your Kantes and Ndidi, you know, those kind of players. My worry with Neves, he's not the quickest. He's okay at covering ground, but you look at Ndidi, unlimited energy tank. Same with Bissouma, the same with Kante. These players could run for 120 minutes and it wouldn't be a problem for them. So I think we've got to factor in the amount of ground these guys will cover, you know, during a game, and because you don't want to get opened up and, you know, getting pulled from side to side and blowing after 30 minutes. So, yeah, I think you've got to factor in, are they going to cover the ground, you know, the kilometres that these guys cover in games? Because, again, it's a very dangerous formation to play.
Fair enough. Finally, I know, Stu, you wanted to add a point, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point. The only issue with Neves is he's not a killer, and you need a good CDM's a killer. He'll destroy the game. That's the whole idea of a CDM. That's what Kante does so well. He destroys the game. He destroys momentum, and that's probably Neves' weakest point. He's not really a killer. And that's the problem, unfortunately, with getting somebody like Neves. He's had Martinho. Martinho is not really a killer, but he's a real player. If you look around him, certainly what he did in the Euros, very, very comfortable footballer, brings a wealth of knowledge, very, very similar to Mata actually, but slightly better in terms of his overall vision, not his touch or his technical ability, just his overall vision. And he makes him and Neves make Wolves tick. Neves, in my opinion, would be very complimentary to Van der Beek. He really, really would. Van der Beek, as we've spoke about last night, got a really good footballing brain. So I think it'd be great for him. But Neves just isn't a killer. Maybe I'm old school on that. Who knows? But part of a centre midfield is to break up the play. It's actually your primary role. So that'd be my only thought process about that.
Fair enough. Stu wants to hire criminals. That's on him. That we don't condone that. But
Absolutely.
Before I come back to Charlie, because I think he's going to make a really important point on the balance of a 4-3-3. I'll come to anyone else for any final statements on Neves, if anyone's got any. No, we all good?
I think I will just back up what Stu was saying though about, and I think the transfer budget is and Charlie made the point about if Pogba goes, we need 3 midfielders. That's why I said before, I think Neves is probably going to be the Pogba replacement, because say we get 50 million for Pogba and Neves 35. Do you really think we're going to go and spend another 60 odd on a defensive midfielder as well? That's just not going to happen. So, and we're not all this talk about Goretzka and all this. We're not getting him. We're just being used for a contract upgrade there. I'm sorry, but the kind of players that we need in our team, you're looking, like you said there, Basuma. Camavinga's a bit young to go straight into the team anyway. So, and it doesn't really make sense when you've got a player like Garner that could fill that role anyway. But then you're looking at like Sal Niguez and players like that. But we don't have the budget this year, so I would take Neves because he's better than the players we've got. And I think Stu is right, despite the fact I don't rate Van der Beek too highly yet. He will complement him and Bruno and the other players we've got as well, because he's a very
I would say that Fred and Jonathan make good points about Carrick. They're absolutely right. Carrick was not the type of player I'm looking at. He's more of a Neves type player. You bear in mind how you had Scholes in and around him. Makes a huge difference when you're playing against or alongside the player of Scholes' caliber. But Fred and Jonathan Ball, both agree with you on that, mate.
Fair enough. Well, I'll come to you, Charlie, just to finish us off then. Your thoughts about the balance of a 4-3-3, I believe.
Yeah, it's just the worry is, if Pogba does leave, Man United haven't got a midfield player. Maybe, I know last night I was harsh on McTominay, but one of McTominay's biggest strengths is he can progress the ball through. He's strong. He can hold people off, and he can progress the ball. I think we saw against Leeds, and I know it's just a one-off game, but he can progress the ball, and that is one of McTominay's strengths. When he can run through an opposition. But I think technical ability-wise, if Pogba leaves, we haven't got a good dribbler in midfield. Now, you might say Bruno Fernandes. I don't think Bruno Fernandes' strength is taking players on.
No.
I don't think that's his strength. Van der Beek, I don't think that's his strength. So you're talking about how are we going to progress the ball from A to B? And if you get a player like Ndidi, defensively, he beats Rice, Neves, etc., on all the stats. Interceptions, blocks, etc. Defensively is the best in the league, there's no doubt. But a worry for me would be if we were to bring in like an Ndidi or a Rice, how we're going to progress the ball from A to B. And what Neves gives you, he gives you that long passing range that Rice and Ndidi don't. So that's all I wanted to say. I think at a 4-3-3, if you look at sort of Leicester's midfield currently, you have sort of a destroyer in Ndidi, you have a player who can play sort of a more controller in Tielemans, and then you have a playmaker in Maddison. And you look at our balance of midfield we've got at the moment. If we were to bring in Rice, we've got sort of a screener. We've got Van der Beek, sort of a box to box, and then you've got Bruno, who's more the player. But we haven't got somebody who can control the game, not somebody who can really dictate a game. And I think that is a worry for us. And I think that's what we've got to look at. I think if we do bring in a destroyer, like an Ndidi. I think we also then need somebody like a Camavinga who can progress the ball, whether it's through dribbling or whether it's through long passing range. So I think we've just got to be careful. I think we've just got to get the balance right, because, you know, the best midfield players, you know, we've seen for England in the national team before, Scholes, Gerrard, Lampard, we could never get England. We've had these fantastic players, but we can't quite fit them in. And this is what you've got to think about in a midfield. Sometimes a balanced midfield is better than a better quality midfield. You know, you even look at sides like Burnley. I know it's very, very simple and basic, but just the balance of a midfield is hugely important in football, and we certainly haven't got it at the minute. So that's just something we need to be careful of, I think, when we go out, you know, looking for a CDM.
Yes, it's a really good point. I think it was Louis van Gaal, wasn't it, when he was in charge of Ajax when they won the Champions League? He says, I don't want the 11 best, I want the best 11. And I think that goes with exactly what you were saying, Charlie. It's not about 11 individuals out there, is it? It's what can make a cohesive midfield unit. But Mark, final point?
Yeah, I just want to agree with Charlie. He's made some very, very good points. Just looking at who scored, and I know obviously you have to take this with a pinch of salt, but it goes in to sort of say that all their real good strengths, all three of them, Declan, Ndidi and Ruben, concentration, ball interception and tackling. But the one extra point, which is very strong for Ruben Neves, is splitting the lines, through balls. So I absolutely agree with Charlie. I think he's made a very, very good point there. And your point there, James, fantastic, mate. It is about the 11 you have, and I think that he would probably gel into our team very well.
James,
Yeah.
I'll just quickly say one little thing on Pogba, and I think we all forget this. We've got one of the best midfielders when he's got his back to goal in the world, like genuinely. And I know people will say, you know, he hasn't performed or whatever. But when he's got his back to goal, he is so good on the half turn. He can hold 2 or 3 players off. And Charlie's right. If we miss that and we don't get a player in who's good enough to replace him, who's strong and can actually kind of take the ball and then, you know, deliver a killer pass, we could be in big trouble, because the balance in the midfield will be gone. You know, you've got to have a Bruno who's aggressive and combative, but you've got to have a player who's able to, you know, stride forward and hold people off as well, because, you know, if you don't have that, the Premier League will get ripped apart because it's physical. So I think we've got to account for the fact that Pogba needs to be replaced, and strength is a key attribute in a midfielder in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Well, before we go on to our next topic, I believe we could be here for a while with this one. So before we do, I'll say let us know what you think about bringing Ruben Neves in, yes or no, and why. And if you want to see more of these beautiful, beautiful faces on a regular basis, then be sure to like and subscribe for more content. But the second point that we wanted to discuss, I'll organise you in how I think we're going to argue this like that. So on the top, well, I'll introduce the topic first. We've got who's better, you know, ability-wise. Not, we'll explain as we go. Who's better ability-wise in terms of in between Rashford and Martial? It's a big debate that's been going on Twitter this week, especially with Martial looking to take Rashford's place while he's out injured. So on the top line, I'm fairly confident in saying we've got the Rashfords, and on the bottom line, I'm fairly confident in saying we've got the Martials. So I'll go to you first, Mark. Why? Well, I'm assuming it is Rashford. I think I'm right in believing that. If so, why?
Listen, I don't dislike Martial. I think he's got a huge amount of potential, but I don't think he's given us enough over the years. His link-up play is excellent. His movement off the ball is pretty good, and I think he's a different player to Rashford. But what I feel is Rashford, he's not quite world class at all. However, the one thing that he needs to improve on is decision making. I think we saw too many times this season his decision making where, you know, we were shouting at him to shoot or to make the pass. He did the opposite on a few occasions. But I think that if he gets that, which really comes with experience, I think that you will see the full, finished article. With Martial, I think that there isn't an attitude problem. As I said, I've got nothing against him whatsoever. I just feel that too many times now we've seen Sanchez come in, Ibrahimovic come in, Lukaku come in, and he seems to drop off. Now, for me, you know, we want to, a lot of people want to talk about Pogba and it being disappointing he move on, but he hasn't been consistent enough. And the people that want to talk about not being consistent enough are correct. He hasn't been consistent enough. And I feel that Martial really probably should be tarnished with the same brush a little bit. I think Rashford, it's very difficult to make that comparison. I think you have to look at what their strengths are, what they bring to the table. And I think they are ever so slightly different, really. But I think on their days, Rashford will produce a far better game on that left-hand side.
Yeah. So it's a fair point. Let us know in the comments who you think is better. Go about it in terms of ability, we'll say, because I think when you bring in other factors, it gets a bit complicated. But Charlie, I'll come to you. Why is Martial the better player?
Well, if you actually, because I'm going to start with, because the modern game seems to all be, I don't like it, but statistics are hugely important. I know Stu doesn't like it either, but I'm not a big fan of it. But obviously, if you're an attacking player, the first thing that people are going to judge you on is goals and assists. Now, if you actually look at the comparisons between Rashford and Martial in those areas, a goal or assist per minute in the Premier League since they both came to they both started playing for Man United, Martial has a better goal or assist per minute ratio than Rashford does. But I don't need that to I don't need that to say that Martial is a more talented player. I think Marcus Rashford's a good player, but I think Martial has more ability, more natural ability. I think that his link-up play is better. I think his decision-making is better. I don't think he's runs in behind are better. I think Rashford's better at that. I think they both have different attributes than each other. But I think the main reason why you've seen Rashford play well with Bruno Fernandes, I think I think they're on the same wavelength. You know, Bruno is always looking for that ball in behind, always. Rashford always wants it. Where I think Martial is a little bit more patient with his game. I think he has better decision making. I think he knows better and more often when to pass, when to shoot, when it's not on, when it is on. And very few footballers that I watch nowadays are clever enough to know when to shoot or when to pass. And I think Martial has that. I think he did dip when Cavani came. I think he does sulk at times. I think I'm not going to, even he's one of my favourite players, I'm not going to, negate that fact. I think he does sulk at times. The work rate point, I wouldn't agree with. I think that if you actually watch, Martial gets back into and provides a better team shape more often than Rashford does defensively. You might not see him run as much, but actually defensively he does more for the team, in my opinion. And if you were to say to me, the Europa League final, who was the biggest miss? Everyone would go, Harry Maguire. I think Anthony Martial was a huge miss in that final. And the reason being that we had Rashford, Bruno, Greenwood, Cavani, four, not a bad thing, but four greedy players who always want to look for the goal. Not a bad thing. We need those players. But if you look at Liverpool, the front three, you got Firmino, less greedy, Salah and Mane, more greedy. You look at the Manchester City team, they have exactly the same thing. You need a mix of greedier players and a mix of players who are more willing to be patient and understand when to pass, when to shoot. And Martial has that. Not happy with his consistency, but I'll ask everybody this question in the comments as well. You cannot name one player since Sir Alex left that has been, other than De Gea, that has been consistent performance-wise for 2 or 3 seasons in a row. The only player is De Gea, and he's not consistent anymore. So the idea that he hasn't been consistent, you could put that on Pogba, Rashford, Lindelof, every single player that we've had. We've only really had De Gea who's been consistent. So ability-wise for me, I think Martial is a better player. But to be honest with you, my best 11 will probably contain them both, really, going into a lot of games, because I think their link-up play together is excellent. So it's not for me, sort of disregarding one or the other. For me, I like both of them. But I think Martial is a more talented player.
Fair enough. Eloquently put as ever, Charlie. And I think that is important to state as well. With this debate, we're not in any way trying to sort of discredit one player over the other or anything like that. That we both think they're both incredible players in their own right. But Stu, when it comes to your own sort of trademark of poser and what categorises as a poser. I'd imagine in your mind, Martial fits into that pretty perfectly. So do you want to just talk us through your thoughts on the situation?
He does, actually. Look, I look at it from if I was playing in the same 11 one week and Martial was playing, the next week Rashford was playing, I would look at the player that frustrates me the most during the 90 minutes. So I'm not questioning ability, because I think ability-wise, I think Martial just about tops Rashford. But from a work rate point of view, I think Rashford just tips Martial. But when you look at their overall game, they're both top drawer. So I would look at it as what would frustrate me in a 90-minute game of football if I was a CDM or I was playing as an 8. And I think Martial would bother me the most, because during a game of football, it's all about 90 minutes. It's about what you do in those 90 minutes or the 70 minutes, however long you're on there. And far too often, Martial's seen walking. Now, I'm not saying Rashford isn't, but far too often Martial is seen walking. And he does look disinterested. And he's not particularly good, or he hasn't been particularly good of late, of running off the shoulder, nor is Rashford, to be fair. When they're both on their game, they run off the shoulder pretty well. So they played the last man very, very well. And I think this has been one of the issues that we've had, certainly Pogba, for example, and certainly Fernandes, is that these guys, for whatever reason, have stopped playing to their own strengths and have started to, play within themselves. Now, we all know Rashford's been injured for 12 months, probably even longer than that. So that might be a contributing factor to his downfall. Look, I don't really buy that a professional footballer sulks because we're bringing in a Cavani type player or a Sancho type player. You need to pull your finger out your arse and get on with it. That's what being a professional footballer is about. What Martial and Rashford have got to do this season, certainly Martial, he's got to want to perform. I talk about it all the time. I talk about desire all the time. And you've got to have that desire. When you're in a squad of players, when you're out on that pitch, you've got to have that desire, because if you're running around, along with 9 of your colleagues, and one of them is body language isn't quite right, doesn't really want to put a tackle in, certainly won't, go in for a 50-50 header or something along those lines, it really, really angers you. And that is the tipping point for me, is who would frustrate me the most. And unfortunately, it would be Martial.
Sorry, I didn't realise I didn't realise you were going to cut off so suddenly.
A bit of a different take on it, but that's how I would view it, because you can't, ability-wise, I think it is there or thereabouts. And we've seen Rashford at his best. I mean, he's just unplayable at times, and so is Martial. But so I would look at it that way. And there's times when I've been watching either in the stadium or at home, and I'd have wringed Martial's neck if I was out on that pitch. So
would have killed him.
Yeah.
Stu would have been one of the killers that he wants to sign. I love your cynical view on it as well. It's who do I hate the least more than anything. But,
absolutely.
But Connor, I know you're not the biggest fan of Rashford on the pitch. So why are you in favour of Martial?
There's a big kind of myth that Rashford's work rate is exceptional. Now, if you actually watch him over 90 minutes, he walks around the pitch exactly the same way people accuse Martial of doing. The difference with Rashford is you'll see him do almost like repetitive sprints every 15, 20 minutes. You'll see him chase down a player, chase down the right back to the centre after the goalkeeper, which is not always Ashley Young used to do that, so let's not kid ourselves that that's a brilliant thing to do all the time. It goes back to decision making. Now, I disagree with Mark that it comes with experience. Football intelligence, I think you either got it or you haven't. I don't think it can necessarily be something that can be taught. And I think when it comes down to actual football intelligence, Martial is clear. I don't think it's as close as people think. Rashford is a very good player, and don't get me wrong, I think he is. The numbers suggest that. But Higuain's got good numbers. Does that mean we want to be bringing him into the side? Because I wouldn't. Now, I understand what Stu's saying. Who would frustrate you more on the pitch? But at the same time, when we're talking about football intelligence, it's like we literally just had that discussion about Neves. Who fits the team better? In my opinion, Martial fits the team better. And if you had somebody, the link up that he had down that left-hand side, and if you signed somebody like a Neves, we saw the link up that he had with Pogba, and that worked very, very well. And I think Rashford is still a very key part of this team. When he comes off the bench against a tired defence, was it Leipzig when he came on and scored that hat-trick in the second half? Because he came on against a tired defence, and that's when he looks absolutely scintillating. And it sounds like I'm really going in on him here, and I don't like this kind of negative way that I'm viewing this, but I also don't buy this, that the injury it's kind of really hindered him. We've been seeing this from Rashford before the injury as well. And I'm sorry, if the injury is as bad as everyone is saying it is, and Rashford is saying it is, he should have got this sorted earlier. I get it. He's a Mancunian lad. He wants to play for the team. But at the end of the day, you've got to think about the team. His performances wasn't good enough towards the back end of the season, so he should have got that fixed. And if he goes into next season without getting that surgery that he says that he needs, I've got no sympathy, because he's got a chance now, and he had a chance in the summer to get this we're still in the summer, but he had a chance to get it done then. So I would take Martial over Rashford, just because I think he's got a better football intelligence, and I don't think that's something you can teach. But like everyone said, it's not Rashford's rubbish, let's get rid of him, or Martial's rubbish, let's get rid of him, because I think both of them can be very effective. Their best season, or the best that they've worked for the team for me, is when they were alternating on that left-hand side. One would start, the other one would come on and really tire out that left-hand side. So he's definitely, I'm not saying get rid of him, and I think it has sounded like a bit of a Rashford hate speech from me, but I can assure you I still think he's a brilliant player. But if you're asking me who I would take in the starting 11 going into next season, it would be Martial on the left-hand side.
So it's a fair point. I'll take that. I suppose I'll round off the Rashford debate then, because I think they've both definitely got their flaws. They're both capable of going missing for 90 minutes. I won't doubt that. Rashford, we've seen, can be a frustrating player to watch, as can Martial. I think the big thing I have against Martial is he just seems so scared of any sort of competition or conflicts. Like was raised earlier, every time a striker has come in or someone who can challenge him in that position, he's fallen off completely. He just doesn't look bothered. Sanchez came in. Martial didn't want to know. Zlatan came in. Obviously, he had a fight with Zlatan about his shirt number, of all things, before the season, and that seemed to affect him a little bit as well. Lukaku came in, didn't really want to know. He had a good sort of first half of the season. And then Cavani's come in, and again, he just hasn't. Before his injury, he was woeful this season. This was his worst season at United, in my opinion. So that's what worries me about Martial. Unless you make him the star man up front, he doesn't want to perform, it seems. And you can't make him the star man up front because he's not the best player up front. That's the difference we have. And I also look at it in the way that if we've got 10 minutes left in a game, regardless of what game it is, and you have Martial and Rashford on the bench, if I were to bring one player on to get us a goal or create something or have an impact on this game, I'm bringing on Rashford. The goals and assists speak for themselves. I don't want to use goal involvements in this argument because it's based on ability, but that is a big part of the game in terms of who's going to have that impact. I just don't think Martial is as big of an impact player as Marcus Rashford. And I think they can both be classed as impact players, because I think, like I said, they have a tendency to go missing. They're not involved in the whole game. Neither of them are. I won't doubt, Martial definitely has abilities that are better than Rashford. His close dribbling, probably his finishing as well is better. But Rashford's ability to create a chance for himself, his passing abilities is very underrated. His power, his speed, his aerial abilities, I think it trumps Martial. I think he trumps Martial in all of those departments. So that would be why I'd go with Rashford. But again, I really hope we see the best of Martial this season, because I'm a big fan of his, and it just doesn't feel right him not performing as well as we can. But I'll come to you, Henry, just to make it even on the Martial debate. So what are you saying about it?
Well, it's interesting we're talking about attitude as well. Ability-wise, at the moment, I think Martial's clear. I just think when it comes to raw talent, he's genuinely a better player. Better finisher, more clinical when it comes to being in and around the 18-yard box. He's just again, I just think he's better in and around there. If you want a goal, I'd say you go with him. Last 10 minutes when players are tired, Rashford completely fair enough. But last season, I'm still not quite sure what happened with him last season. He took to running into players instead of running around them, which was really frustrating. And his attitude, it was awful. It really was. I'm sorry. I'm not buying that one's got worse attitude than the other. They both stink, to be honest. And I've got. I remember I did the podcast with James, and he was sat in like aghast. I was going in on Rashford after the Sheffield United game, but he was walking. He was pointing at other people. You do this, I'm just going to stand there. I've got a video of him standing while two players run past him and pointing and going, oh, "That's your job." So I'm not buying that he's, his attitude's fantastic and that, he's always the golden child. I'm not having that. So I'm at the moment, ability-wise, Martial. I think Rashford's got a really high ceiling. And if he can reach that, it could be fantastic. Sancho could be really good for him. But at the moment, Martial would deliver if you really, really needed a goal in a tight space. I think Martial delivers. And again, Rashford needs this operation, but I'm not buying that as an excuse for attitude. If you're slightly injured, it doesn't mean that you can't run. He's clearly fit enough to play the games. He's clearly fit enough to run around the pitch. So why can't he make a tackle? Why can't he get stuck in? His attitude last season stank. It was awful. I'm sorry. I'm not. I know everyone loves him, but I'm not. I'm the same with every other player. If their attitude stinks, it stinks. And both of them, they do my head in when I watch them play, because you think, you've got so much potential, and you're not quite fulfilling it. James, quickly, you mentioned the Ibrahimovic thing. I'm just going to wade in quickly on that. Sancho has come in and taken a number 25. Do you think Cavani would be happy if Sancho came in and nabbed his number 7? Do you think he'd be happy? He's got a season.
I don't think he's petulant enough to really let it bother him.
I think he's signed another deal away from his family. Martial's brand is Martial 9. He's known as the number 9. He's United's number 9. I'm pretty sure he was he was trying to brand that at Monaco as well. He really wanted to be the number 9, the one of the best players for United. And I think Ibrahimovic coming in and just taking it off him, it's going to unsettle you a little bit, isn't it? Would you, if someone came in and we got another midfielder and he went, right, I'm having a number 10 off Rashford, do you think that would make him happy? I think it does play a part. I don't think it's a big attitude problem, but I think if someone comes in and takes your number off you just almost by force, which it was, I think you have every right to be a little bit pissed off. I would be if I was, I play as a keeper. If I'm a keeper and someone goes in and goes, right, I'm having your number 1 shirt, I go, what the fuck are you doing? No, you're not. I'm sorry. Having played, I understand his frustration with that, and it would, a number is to players, a number is sacred. It genuinely is.
Well, can you use that same excuse for when Sanchez came in, when Lukaku came in, when Cavani came in? 2 of those players aren't number 9. I get Lukaku took the number off of Zlatan, but he's not performed when any of them have come in.
Yeah, but this is it's partly a competition thing, which I think is partly an issue. But I do think it genuinely plays a part in a mentality of a player. If he wouldn't, if someone come in and took your shirt as a number 9, and he's now the number 9, not you, do you feel wanted at a club? Do you feel happy at a club? You've got 2 options. You're either a bit of misery guts, or you're determined to go and prove someone wrong. Martial's attitude is he's a bit down when things don't go well for him. He puts his head down. So the best thing to do when someone has that kind of attitude issue is to go and take his number off him. I think it was a rash move from I think it was Mourinho at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was such a Mourinho thing to do, come in and take someone's number off him, and it's like, I'm the dominant man here, not you. And it's I thought that was really poor from him and the club.
Yeah, I think I will agree. Like, it is a point. It is obviously going to have an effect. I think the only thing that goes against him is, like I said, with the other players that have come in. But I know, Connor, you really quickly wanted to add on this.
Yeah, just very quick. There's this discussion that it might have unsettled him. It didn't. Look at the him. That's why I was making the point. Him and Rashford in that season, when they were alternating off the left, were very good. So I don't understand this whole thing that he was unsettled. He clearly wasn't, because he was playing, and it was only the Sanchez signing when he was kicked out of the team that that would piss me off. If you've got this player coming in, I get it. He was big money guy, Alexis Sanchez coming in. That would piss me off if I was playing well up to that point, which he was, and then just getting kicked out of the team. So I get that frustration, but I don't buy this. Oh, he switched off because of a shirt number thing, because he didn't. Because him and Rashford were very, very good on that left-hand side together when they were alternating. So that's all I wanted to say on that. I just didn't agree that it affected Martial's performance, because I just don't think it did.
Fair enough. Well, we're back around for round two. Mark, I'll come to you. I know you wanted to add another point.
Yeah, just a couple really. Connor, you're absolutely spot on. I don't think I get your point, Henry. I don't disagree with you, but that's not going to leave a long-lasting effect. I think it was poor by the club. I think it was poor by Mourinho, but that won't affect his form now. To go back to your point about Rashford's attitude, I'm not quite sure where you've got that impression that his attitude is poor. And I'll just add in there as well that he's an absolute national treasure. But no, listen, it's a difficult one for me, because I don't want to dislike either one of them. But I think a few of you have hit the nail on the head, really, that Martial is more clinical. There's absolutely no denying that. I think behind Greenwood, maybe Cavani as well, he's probably our second or third best finisher. There's absolutely no doubt about that. However, if sometimes you obviously get your strikers that are confidence players, and I think Martial is too much of that. I think with Cavani, with Greenwood, with Rashford, even if they're having a bit of a poor game or going through a poor moment, I really feel that they could produce something at any moment, and I don't see that in Martial. And with regards to the Euros thing, Connor, I think you made that point about going and he should have had the time off. I do not blame him whatsoever. I think in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. We'd all would have loved him to have that time off to get his operation. But when you are 22, 23 years old, you're called up to the England team, you're pretty much one of the star men, you're going to take him through the Euros. He did a bloody good job in the Euros. You're not going to turn that down. I know he had a bit part here and there, but it was part of the team. He would have been. It's not just about playing necessarily. It's also everything that surrounds it. So it's a shame that he's going to have his operation now, but I think we've got the cover there to be okay. And hopefully Martial can step up and take that place.
Hopefully. I'll come to you, Charlie. I know you have something to add.
Yeah, it was just the thing about the way I would use Martial and Rashford. What I would do is, if everybody was fit, and let's say we're going into a game against a team in the bottom half of the table, I think Martial is better at breaking down a low block than Rashford is, and I would I'd start Martial on the left, Cavani up front, and Sancho on the right, and then with 20 minutes to go, I would use Rashford as an impact player, and I think Marcus Rashford is a very, very good impact player. I think I'd use Martial to start, and then I'd bring Rashford on as an impact player. And the stuff about the Rashford operation, I think Ollie handled this situation awfully throughout the whole season. It's granted that he didn't have the cover of actually Martial, who was injured, obviously, to bring him in. But particularly leading up to that Europa League final, he was actually played on the right in the second leg against Roma, because Ollie knew Pogba has to play on the left, because for me, Pogba on the left was performing way better than Rashford was. And on ability, obviously, Pogba's a better footballer than Rashford. So he sort of got us to that Europa League final, really, in that first leg. Pogba was just incredible. And then, obviously, Fred got injured for the final. He moved Rashford back on the left and moved Pogba back to the pivot. And I think that was a big mistake. But I do think that Rashford's injury in the operation, I think Ollie should have said halfway through the season, right, you're not right. You've got to have 2 or 3 weeks out. And people might say, well, who's going to come in? And I'll say Dan James or Ahmad. And Ahmad isn't ready and Dan James is not good enough. If you're talking about a football team in terms of better for the team, a half-fit Rashford is not better than a full-fit Dan James. And the reason being is it's not just the attacking side, it's the defensive side of things, team shape, defensive work. And Rashford was running 50 yards forward and not running 50 yards back. But the thing that Dan James will give you is he'll do both. Whether he'll have enough as much quality as Rashford, no. But for the team, it would have been better to take Rashford out for 2 or 3 weeks and say, focus on yourself. And actually, Rashford should have done it himself. People talk that he's unselfish. I think he was actually selfish. You can look at it both ways. You can say he was unselfish for sacrificing himself for the team, but he was selfish for not sacrificing himself to allow somebody to come in and do a better job. So you can look at it both ways. But I just think that for me, I was very disappointed how everybody handled that situation. I think error after error after error for me. And as Mark said, it's easy to say in hindsight, but I think Gareth Southgate knew that Rashford wasn't going to be involved much in the Euros anyway. And, you've got Jesse Lingard who could have come in. You've got James Ward-Prowse who could have come in. It's not like Rashford was a key player in that team. He wasn't going to start. Gareth Southgate would have known that when he was injured. He would have known what team he was going to play. So, yeah, strange one for me. I just think the way it's been handled. And just one last point as well. I think Rashford gets away with poor performances easier than Martial does because of all the PR. I think we saw when Rashford has a bad game, he sort of gets away with it a little bit with everything he does off the field. And I've always said, to be honest with you, fantastic, Rashford, you're doing stuff. I don't care at all. I really don't. I judge people by what they do on the football field. I don't care what you do off it. But if what you do off it starts to impact what you do on it, then it's a problem. And I think that has to be a factor to be considered. So that was just the last point. I think Martial just get unfairly treated. But it's happened with Paul Pogba as well, I think. So that was just the last point on that.
Fair enough. Well, I know, Henry, you've got something to add, but I want to keep it as sort of a back and forth. So I'll come to Stu with what you had to say. What else have you got?
Yeah, the interesting thing about everybody's points tonight is that it just exposes the modern day footballer and how the modern day footballer views themselves rather than the team. Look, the interesting thing is Manchester United throughout the years, throughout our history, we've had 4 or 5 quality strikers, and I'm talking top drawer strikers. And, the 99 team, for example, we all know we had York Cole, Solskjaer and Sheringham, but they all played their full parts throughout the season, and they all scored a good amount of goals. And the likes of Rashford, the likes of Martial, the likes of Sancho, the likes of Greenwood, they're going to be fighting to play alongside Cavani. I know Cavani's not going to play every game, but Cavani is going to be our focal point. They're going to be fighting. And if you haven't got the spirit, or you haven't got the hunger, you haven't got that determination to fight for your place, then unfortunately you're always going to have debates of this nature where some are saying that, his body language is wrong, he doesn't give enough for the team, doesn't score enough goals, doesn't attack the box like he used to, etc. Because it comes down to, as I said to you before, modern day footballers, they're weak mentally. That's a real problem for modern day football as a whole. I'm not just talking about Rashford and Martial and some of our team. I'm talking about modern football as a whole. They're weak mentally. There's no real mental strength. There's no real aggression throughout the team. Somebody makes a mistake today, they say, they applaud it and all that kind of bollocks. There's no, nobody on a football pitch gets taken into account anymore by team members. And it allows the likes of Rashford, it allows the likes of Martial, it allows sometimes the likes of Fred and McTominay, it allows these players to have bad games without any consequences. And when you look at an old school type of footballer, I'm talking Cavani now, who will run for 90 minutes. He will clear a defensive header and he'll be up front waiting for the cross to come in. Modern day footballers don't do that. And Martial and Rashford, I'd like to see Martial have a really solid season, but this season, Martial and Rashford, they should both be scoring 15 goals. Whatever Sancho dips in with, whatever Greenwood dips in, and whatever Cavani dips in with, we're going to have a very strong attack. So, but you've got to look at it from the mentality point of view. Modern day players are weak. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, it's hard to agree with that as well. I don't think anyone can argue with it. Sorry, I meant it's hard to argue with it, not agree with it. Henry, just to finish us off, we are coming up to an hour now, so this will be the last point on the discussion. What are your final points on it?
I just wanted to kind of add on what Charlie said there, and I think people, I get the charity stuff, and I'm honestly delighted for him. He's invested so much money in it, and I agree with what he's doing. But he gets away with poor performances because of the charity work, and everyone's answer when he has a poor performance. And Mark, you're right, he is a national treasure. But everyone's answer when he has a poor performance is, "Oh, but he's a national treasure. Oh, but he does charity work." Can we? I as a person that loves football, I put football and outside activities, whatever it is, whether it's Ronaldo posing in underwear or building his own hotel or Rashford doing charity work or other players doing charity work. There's Jordan Henderson as well. We invest so much money in it. I put performances on the pitch and charity work and other stuff to one side. Separate the two. And if he has a poor performance, just accept that he has a poor performance and say, okay, you could have done better here. Because we absolutely leather Pogba and Martial and again, Dan James will run for 90 minutes and I sometimes I just think he's just not that good of a player. But I'll say that people need to keep the same energy throughout all the players. They're paid to play football. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but that is a fact. If you're paid to do a job, if you're paid to be a lawyer and outside stuff is distracting you and you're not doing your job properly, you'll get fired. Why should it be any different for a footballer? They are paid a lot of money to play for these clubs. And lo and behold, we're saying that players should get away with it because, they do stuff off the field. I put one aside from the other and praise him for what he's doing off the pitch. But if he has a poor performance, accept it and say, he's had a really poor performance here. And if he has a good performance, praise it. But he has been paid a lot of money to play football. So terrible as it may sound, that should come first and foremost because that is what his income is for, playing football. Terrible as it may sound terrible and controversial, but that's just the way I see it.
I think just jumping quickly on what Henry's saying there, I think as long as people are actually critiquing the football rather than being abusive, I don't see the problem. I think that's when it gets too far, when people go on the abusive side, and that's just ridiculous over a game of football. But you are allowed to critique what you see in those 90 minutes. And it's like I've said in the past to people, Rashford is one of the nicest guys I think most people could ever meet. But so are half of my mates. It doesn't mean I want them starting for United, So I think that's where you've got to have the same level of energy for Rashford as you do with Martial, as you do with Pogba, De Gea, Henderson, whoever it is, because we're judging them on those 90 minutes for the club that we all support. So as long as people don't go overboard and just go on the abusive side, just critique the football and what you're seeing. That's all I say.
Just one quick one on that. Social media doesn't allow it, does it? I mean, we've all spoken about social media before. If you go back 2 years ago, people were paying out Jesse Lingard for his J Lings Twitter handle and what he was pouncing about on fucking Instagram and fucking all this kind of bollocks. Paul Pogba's hair every time he gets a new fucking hairstyle, it's on Twitter, blah, 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 fucking blah. You know what it's like. And social media, unfortunately, it fuels the fire. And unfortunately, people are now, they're pouring petrol and now they're throwing matches. This is how it goes. Look, I don't personally care what players do off the pitch. It doesn't really bother me, but you've got to perform on the pitch. It's just one of those social media. It all gets banged out into.
Just quickly, I'm looking at the comments on there, and I'm some of them I'm actually in dismay. Honestly,
I was reading it. Yeah.
I'm going to call it out because I say it as I see it, and I'm sorry. I'm in absolute dismay at some of the stuff I'm seeing on there and earlier in the chat. Listen, have an opinion, but when it comes to racism and stuff, there is absolutely no place for it. And and you can have an opinion on taking the knee, and that's absolutely fine. But the idea that there is an opinion on racism as a whole, there is not an opinion. There is a right and wrong when it comes to that stuff. And I'm just gonna say it as I see it. That's all.
Connor, plug our racism video.
Yeah, so on All for United, go back about a week ago. We had this discussion after the Euro final. I'm not going to say it's a good discussion because we shouldn't even be having that discussion in the first place. But yeah, go and check out that video. We're all against it on this channel. Like Henry just said, there's right and wrong. It's not even a discussion or a debate. People should know what's right and wrong.
I'm just saying it because I've seen loads of comments in and around that topic, and I'm just saying it. That is just whatever it is. Fine to have an opinion, but it's just just no.
Well, no, listen, Henry, it needs calling out, and I think you've done the right thing there in doing it. It's a shame we have to end the episode on such a note, but we'll put a positive spin on things. United are back tomorrow. Come on, we're playing QPR. We will have a match review tomorrow at 9 p.m. Currently building a panel. Whether it will be able to rival this one or not, we shall see.
No chance.
No chance at all. Not unless Stuart's involved. We've got no chance.
No, I'm not. I can't tomorrow, lads. I would, but I can't, unfortunately. I will get shot and strung up by the missus.
Everyone, just harry Stuart on Twitter.
She will be the killer that Stu wants at CDM. That's what
they sound like a great pair, don't they?
Oh, tell me she's the killer, all right. I well and truly told what to do.
Well, listen, if we get Stuart on tomorrow, we'll have to make sure it's a brilliant episode because it will definitely be his last. But make sure you tuned in tomorrow for that episode. It should be good. It'll be nice to watch United again if for some reason you pay for MUTV, weirdos. But thank you to everyone on the panel. It's been a brilliant discussion. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you have as well. Thank you for everyone who's contributed in a sense, I suppose, for the comments that are relevant about the video. We thank you for that. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like and subscribe. And as I said, we'll see you tomorrow.